Okay, now we have levels of service report, which is known as the performance reporting, which we get monthly. A lot of the issues in here we've discussed on a monthly basis, and they don't change from month to month. And some of the questions asked in the previous paper also refer through to here. So Peter, would you just like to introduce, as a starter for 10, what this report is and what it measures and how we monitor it?
Okay, this is the update on levels of service. It's the year-end forecast set by managers. The initial result for the half year is trending down from October to 80.9, call it 81 at the moment. The key point to raise there is that there's actually more amber or yellow than usual at this time of year. Now, I should be careful to describe that. That doesn't mean that these levels of service have failed. It means that the managers are signalling a degree of risk and that they require focus to get them back over the line to successful. Now, normally there would be 5, 6, 7% in there. It's higher than usual. The reason for that is that managers are working towards no surprises. So rather than discovering in May or June of next year that something isn't working, they're flagging it now. So that's why the amber component is a little higher than usual. Most of these are in, as you would expect, the infrastructure areas. There are some in non-infrastructure, but they're basically levels of service around water supply, wastewater, some traffic and roading would make up the bulk of them. That's the state of play at the moment. Attached to that graph is the comments from the managers, divided into those that are not going to be successful and those that are, as I said, have a degree of risk. They state, where possible, the current actual, their comments about why the issue is there and their remedial actions that they're proposing to take. I'm happy to field questions around those levels of service where I have some knowledge. Obviously, it's across the entire spread of council services and I don't always know the answer, in which case we need to refer to the manager concerned for special advice.
Okay, Dion?
I wanted to pick on two parts. One was the maintain resident satisfaction with road condition, so that might be a question Dave can answer as well, but there's one element here around the CRAF. Can we get an update on where that's at?
Could you just cite the page number?
Oh, sorry, it's 77, and page 7 of the actual specific report. Yeah, I mean it's quite bad reading when you look at it. There's an increased amount of collapse under redundant pipe networks, still to be repaired out in the east, especially increasing number of sinkholes, significant amounts of curb and channel, but more around the smoothing part. And a lot of, it says many roads are now well past their expected life. I just want to get an update on where the CRAF money is, when we're looking to get this sort of stuff, and actually, so we can actually say to the people of Christchurch, we're actually doing what we said.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, we've got a workshop coming up with Treasury, DPMC, council elected officials, the chair and deputy chair of the ITI committee, and council staff and NZTA next week, I think, to progress the investment logic map for the business case for the CRAF. We have put the investment proposal to Treasury last year, very soon after the LTP. Their main concern about progressing that with the Crown was that they were worried about other councils coming to the Crown and seeking money for transport, which is obviously ostensibly a normal kind of council cost, and if they were going to let us spend that money on maintenance and other activities, then they might suffer from similar claims from other TLAs across the country.
But do the rest of the country not realise that we've just had a big earthquake and we've got some major issues?
Yes, they do. That was still their concern. So the original investment proposal hadn't progressed through to the Crown. We have since met with Treasury and updated that and provide them with a revised draft. So we're hopeful that that will satisfy their concerns.
When you say you're hopeful,
We sent them a revised proposal earlier on this year. We haven't had a response back from them as yet.
So this has just taken so long. It's ridiculous. Anyway, the other one that I had, I mean, I think there's some, you know, I'm a little bit annoyed by that. The other one is the customer on page 79, again, page 9 of the specific report. The improved customer perception of the ease of use in council on-street parking facilities. Yeah, that one, there's the remedial action is to the council to request staff to work in conjunction with Christchurch NZ to investigate options of attracting more people in the central city with a winter package. But that winter package obviously has nothing to do with car parking. So what actually is being done to improve that?
So in terms of off-street and on-street, the focus that we've had is tried to encourage people to use the off-street facilities, which council has recently invested a significant amount of money in, so both the Crossing and the Litchfield Street facility. So that has been where the emphasis has occurred. And we've been reasonably successful on that, so we've had increased number of people using those facilities and revenue is up. However, revenue on on-street facilities is down, and you know that's probably just reflects that shift of people using those off-street facilities where they weren't previously. In terms of the satisfaction of ease of use of on-street facilities, that's been complicated by the change in road layouts, the constant works that we've had, not just council works, but obviously Otakaro and private enterprise as well, and we've had a lot of temporary traffic management, which has been ongoing. So I think that the kind of decline or finishing of some of those works should help improve the perception of ease of use of some of those on-street facilities into the future, but I can't give you a guarantee that that's going to occur. So that's the reason for the way that we've put that in there at the moment, which I think is an ample.
Yeah, I mean, the issue that I'm trying to raise here is that the remedial action talks about, the work Christchurch NZ and the council, including the winter package, but the winter package doesn't include anything to do with car parking on street or anything like that. So I just want to make sure that these actions actually reflecting what the work that actually is getting done on these specific things. That's just a point to note, I suppose.
Well, just to follow on from that, so this is, when you say on-street parking, that's across the whole city?
Improve, yes, that's correct. So it's not Central City specific. There's also what I was generally talking about, the Central City, but there is a suburban parking policy which the council's been progressing out of strategy and transformation as well, which looks at parking at some of those other high usage areas across the city outside of the Central City. So the Ricketons.
We have a hearings panel report coming back on that quite soon. So. Yeah, and this is actually, your level of service target will be determined by a survey in May or June. So until we get that, we don't know.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Glenn?
Yeah, thank you. My question was also about the roads there, page 77, when I read it. We've seen the heat maps of the road. I know you use two measures. I think one is road smoothness or roughness, another is some other measure across Christchurch. We know the broader east, so not only, say, Burwood Pegasus, but the broader wasn't at the same level as actually the west. Burwood Pegasus alone had 500 million spent on it out of the skirt budget, which is good, but still the roads obviously just in those two wards alone are not up to scratch. But it's not just that ward; it's the broader east. So the old Hagley Ferrymead further down and wider. Is there a plan to to have an equitable approach over the roading? So not an equal, but an equitable approach to get these roads up to scratch. We've had a really good briefing just the other night from some of the team over the roads in our ward, which is great. But overall, is there a plan to bring these up on the same level?
So broadly speaking, we're obviously still suffering from the post-earthquake sequence legacy of roading asset which is not in the condition we'd like it to be in, and I think it's a natural occurrence for that to be where we're at, because if you think about all the work that's happened and the amount of underground infrastructure which has had to be fixed, it didn't make a lot of sense to invest in the roading asset really early on, because that simply would have become damaged again. But now we have a bit of a legacy which we're seeking to upgrade, and I think, you know, within current budgets, it's it's going to be a reasonably long lag time to improve that across the city. So I'm not just speaking about the east, but the CRAF, which we spoke to earlier on, does identify those 5 priority areas, and I don't have the map in front of me across the city, so we're looking to spend up to $25–30 odd million, which we would hope to elicit NZTA funding for as well, so we can significantly increase that across the city. So a couple of those areas are in the east, and we've identified we're currently finalising the roads asset condition survey for that at the moment, but I think that'll make a demonstrable difference to those parts of the city which we think are affected the most. So that's probably the best answer to your query.
Supplementary there, the maintenance that would have gone on the red zone roads, and there are quite a few of them, what happened to that? So we know that they're not given priority. We know why. There's a kind of minimalistic approach taken. We understand that, but you know, over time that they would have had their own budget portion to keep them up to scratch. So
that's correct, but I think you find the cost of the overall maintenance of our roads, given the comments we've got in there around the, broadly speaking, a lot of the roading asset is kind of getting towards the end of its expected life. So, and if we don't invest in renewals for that, which we haven't been able to do because a lot of the roads still been dug up for underground assets, we've carried more cost in our maintenance program than we would have otherwise. So whatever we haven't spent in the red zone has certainly been committed elsewhere across the city.
Kind of by default went into the ether or the pot of... Okay.
Phil?
Thank you for this performance report, because it answers quite a few questions which pulls together the data. And I guess what I'm going to ask you about is perhaps processes from here when the areas where we're not likely to meet our target, and how we remedy that, and because we know that in advance. And on our page 72 on water, there's 2 sections there about how we operate water supplies reliably, and also, well, there's two references there. But I just want, especially because of the increase of the number of leaks, and the importance of the whole water issue, I just wondered if that could be an area where it's clear the staff are monitoring this, if in fact we could get some at a future meeting like this, that we get an update on on the results of that monitoring.
So Phil, you're sort of saying in a way the remedial action, we'd like to see some outcome from that remedial action? Peter, does that make sense?
At a process level, it's certainly possible. I mean, this is management input into a reporting system. It could be supplemented by, if it's a special item of interest, by additional information, or by the manager coming to the meeting to respond to questions.
Yeah.
So at a process level, it's pretty straightforward, provided we know what the areas of special interest are.
Well,
yeah. I mean, Dave might want to add to that. Dave?
We're certainly gathering the information on both those. I think the remedial actions that we've got there is exactly what we're trying to do. We did report some of the interim results actually to the MOH when they came down, particularly around that second one around the stop-start, so spikes in pressure transients that go through and are, we think, creating more breakages on our lovely end of the life AC pipes and things. So certainly we could do a briefing to council or to this committee or to the ITI committee on the outcomes of some of those and where we're going. I think in the long term, when we talk briefly to you about reticulation at a briefing Helen and I gave you 2 weeks ago or something like that, we talked about some of that work that we were doing around potentially monitoring some of those and monitoring systems and things that we may have to do to try and not only meet these performance criteria, but criteria on what we think might be the new drinking water standards. So certainly we can brief council would probably be the best way as we get more and more information on them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Okay. Andrew?
Thank you. A number of the performance measures in this report are dependent on the results of the resident satisfaction survey. And obviously, you know, there were some areas of concern that came out of last year's resident satisfaction survey. There were steps that we took in some cases to resolve those, or to improve, or to hopefully improve resident satisfaction. I note on the various different targets and remedial action comments, it's variously noted that the resident satisfaction survey results will be known in May, is what it's there for some of them, and some of them say May/June. Now, I'm aware that the resident satisfaction survey has been undertaken at the moment until the end of March, obviously so that we can take anything that comes out of that this year into account in our annual plan thinking. We're keen for those results to be seen by us and obviously made public as early as possible after that survey is concluded. So I noticed the reports from the surveyor were made available or were dated April last year, and we made the results available publicly in May. I'm concerned that some suggestion, May/June, means that it would be later than that this year, and we may in fact not have those reports available for consideration as part of the annual plan. Would be kind of a follow-on from there. What's your understanding of when the survey results will be available to us and will be available publicly?
I think the May/June references are just a misunderstanding from the managers or those managers who are not always close to the process. So the timings are exactly as they have been in every other previous year, with preliminary results in April and statistical tabulated final report results in May. Yeah. So the June reference is just a misunderstanding from a couple of managers.
So we can be confident that it will be May. I mean, last year was mid-May. There's no reason why we wouldn't expect to do exactly the same this year.
We work to those timings every year.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, I have Aaron. And then
yeah, so a couple of questions. Just on page 77 under the transport where it says comments, and it's got Q1, then in brackets April to June 2018, then Q2 July to September. Which Q is that? Is it Q1 of it's not of a calendar year, and it's not of a council year. Is it a regular, and it's not a business financial year? How does that work?
I can't actually respond to that. That's is Richard still with us? No? Yes? Okay, we've got help on the way. Just hold for a moment.
It's just a clarification question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
It's easy to clarify, sorry. This is reporting of the crash analysis data, as we've discussed in the past, and the reporting from police is around 3 months in arrears. So our Q1 reporting, so we report 3 months off in the financial year. So I'm sorry that's confusing like that. It is the Q1 reporting. It's April to June. We report that at the end of Q1. But it's April to June of that year because we report 3 months in arrears. So that's why I say in the bottom of this, the relies on input from New Zealand Police, and as such there's a delay in confirmed data. Therefore results are reported 1 April to 31 March for each year. So our Q1 report is 3 months in arrears. Does that make sense? That's in order to try and explain that. That's why I put that in there, but it's caused the confusion too because it's confusing.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense now.
Help?
Cool. Yep. No, that's great. And then my other question, Raph, is around. It's a follow-up to Glenn's one around equity and roading, and it will be good to have a breakdown of the grade 4 and 5 roads across the city by ward, just because it is a complaint that comes up from the public that certain parts of the city are in worse condition than others, and for us to get an equity, or to be looking at our finances going forward on where we should be spending the money, if particular wards do show a lot of kilometres of grade 4 and 5, then we should be putting resources that way to, give them a fair suck of the salve, so to speak, versus areas where we seem to renew roads in areas that don't need it as much. It would appear when you go and look at other areas where, crikey, you wouldn't want your mother-in-law to live there. They're not good roads, so it'd be great to get them fixed up.
Yes, that's understood.
Father-in-law then.
Yeah, I mean, okay, you can withdraw that comment. Yeah, I mean, we should have that information because we have the information, Dave, on all the grade 4 and 5 roads, so it shouldn't be that difficult to split out. Richard, you can...
It's already on our website, Mr Chair. There's a map which shows the grade 4 or 5 roads, but we don't just repair those ones that are poorly damaged. It's based on their hierarchy as well. So those roads, which obviously are major distributor roads, which have got more traffic, they're the ones that we'd look at perhaps investing the money first, as opposed to some other roads.
Yeah, so anyone should be able to go on and have a look at that map and see.
Which ones are due for repair, which is a different map.
We should have both, but
We should have both,
Okay. I have Dave, and then Yanni.
Yeah, look, I'd like to just expand further on the comments that both Glenn and Aaron have made. Look, we have these roads around the city that are grade 4 and 5. We also have this overlying hierarchy of repair where roads of significant use are already in the program, and we constantly hear, you know, this one's in the program. What I think we need to move to is looking at a ward-based system, and then actually prioritising an order of repair. Just because some road is not up there in the hierarchy, why should the people of that area have to wait years and years and years to get a repair to a road that's in some cases like driving down a riverbed? So I would really advocate that we need to look at a priority of what roads do we need to repair and get them in a priority sequence of repair. So that was that one, and while I'm on the floor, I'd just like to introduce another one. Really, when we talk about customer satisfaction with the city's parks, and I really think we need to sort of review our levels of service and the way we, in some instances, allocate our contracts. There's quite a disparate need or different needs for maintaining an asset in the west than, for example, the east. There are totally different sort of perspectives that come into play. And I think at times we have this one-fits-all model of contract when it comes to maintaining our parks. So I do believe that we need more oversight in the level of service, and at a local level we actually need more oversight into the contract that's being let and how appropriate it is to the environment that they're asked to look after. And I use the treatment of riverbanks particularly. We have contracts let where the gradient of the riverbank will be from a quite flat to a quite steep. And the contractor is probably trying to do all that with a ride-on mower. And then you'll get some weed eaters come in and go along, and I can use an example now currently of New Brighton Road. They've just gone along a section there with weed eaters, and frankly, you know, I think the end result is not befitting the environment that it's being conducted in. So I'm looking for some overhaul, shall we say, in the treatment of our natural assets, and reflecting that a one-fits-all contract is never going to work in Christchurch, and we need to be looking at a greater involvement of our community boards, particularly in what they expect, and to a degree in the contract itself, and just giving some oversight.
Thank you. That was a nice debate. But in terms of the question is that we want more input into the contract arrangements.
Yes.
So, Peter, when the contracts come up, that triggers a review of the level of service. Is that correct?
When major contracts are to be renewed, that triggers 17A.
Right. So that is the time. So when these parks contracts are coming up, that should trigger a deep analysis of exactly what you're saying.
But I don't think the process at the moment allows for an involvement at community board level or elected member level.
Well, it should. I mean, that's what we're asking staff to come back to us with, a schedule for considering these items in more detail. And I think even going back to your question on the split into wards, you know, that information is there, and we constantly ask for it, so it shouldn't be too difficult to pull that stuff out. Well, yeah. So I mean, it's a consistent refrain, that information, so that people can actually make decisions about the allocation of resources to particular areas or roads. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, just before we finish off on that point, you know, I have to say the ODA information that we got around the complaints that were coming in, the projects that were on budget, was actually really useful. And that sort of approach, I think, helps people connect where the problem areas are and where we're spending the money. And people, you can see quite clearly from that memo that Mike Burke sent through how we're addressing the issues that have been raised through the call centre and through the operation of council. So I think something like that for roading would actually be very good. I just wanted to check, like, so this is the graph, and I know I've referred to these before, but this is a graph in 2014.
Page?
So it's not on the page, it's the memo from Mark Christensen with the skirt repairs and the HIG group. And it just showed really clearly, like, the increase in water main breaks when Skirt stopped the HIG stopped the funding for, and Sarah stopped the funding for water main renewals as part of the, or repairs as part of the Skirt program. So I just wondered if there was like an easy update. I know Dave, I think Adamson has made reference to this before, but there's a number of graphs in here which are really good, simple, easy to understand information that just show the kind of trend on the key kind of complaints that we're getting. So I just wondered if we could kind of get that updated for today.
Is there, are you referring to an item on this report? I mean, that's
well, it is.
Interesting.
It's around the water mains and the water reticulation network breaks.
What page?
So, where was it? Sorry, just flick through. There's a lot here. Right.
Okay. Are there any other questions while we're waiting?
So.
We'll come back to that, Jimmy.
Right. So just, oh yeah, just checking on also 14.03 and
page
page 5 of 12, 75. It's the managing the stormwater network in a responsible and sustainable manner. There's reference there to the minimal cut zone bank appearance without compromising ecological benefits. There's a number of kind of references to that. There's also a reference accelerated program for line drain maintenance being implemented. So I just wondered if we could kind of get some information around what's kind of happening. I'm not quite sure where we've got to with that whole looking at the ecological effect over the river, but we did have submissions through the annual plan of groups that were concerned that we didn't have proper ecological assessments for where we were doing capital works.
Dave, do you want to...
We've given the ITI committee a report back on all those trials and the outcomes and a resolution on that, but we can certainly make that or bring that back up and make that available to all the councillors if you wish. We reported back on the, you know, the no-cut trials and the complaints and how we've now managed all the different places.
And also you've told us how you're managing the dredging because of the white bait. So I think we've got quite good standards there and principles. But
so are there ecological reports that the community can see so they know that we've considered the ecological impact?
is this relevant to this right now? Or?
Yeah, well, Dave's answered it, so that's fine.
Right, okay. So it's page 72. We've got council operates water supplies in a reliable and responsive manner. We're not going to meet our target.
So, point of order, Yanni, I had already asked about that, and I thought that Raf had agreed as chair that in fact we would get future information about that to explain the actions so that they work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can I just get? Can we get those graphs updated so that we can show? We can.
Dave is coming back with that information.
That would be really good.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry?
The closeout report that we asked for.
Yep. And that'll come to this committee. Yeah, we're just trying to finalise the financial, so I'm not sure. Yeah.
It's
any
just
other
statistical
questions?
information based on the thing. I think
There's one report being done. It's sensible to have one. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Sensible having one report that gathers all of the information together.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the problem. We get these huge reports with 1,000 pages and lots of detail. All I'm asking for is some simple graphs that just get updated.
Oh, right.
So the other question I had was, there's a number of references to the hybrid system not recording CSRs. So can someone just explain kind of what's happening in that My Council CSR recording, tracking, feeding back to people with complaints? Because a number of these things we're not being able to measure. And I'm just really concerned that we've got people contacting us, not getting the follow-up, and then not getting accurate information about the number of complaints.
I can't answer on Hybris exactly, but I can repeat the advice from staff at the end of last year, which was that the information exists. It's not lost. It's a problem to do with reporting off a new platform. So in other words, the data exists, but to make it come through reporting was the obstacle at the time. And I think the discussion then was that that needs to be prioritised as a reporting function. The data isn't lost or the CSRs being ignored. It's a reporting at the end of the pipe issue. Dave, you may have more knowledge of where that's up to than I do, but that was the state of play in late November.
So my understanding is that the system is working as far as people that putting in a complaint, getting a response, being able to log, to track it, and it is just the data, as Peter Ryan said, the data collation in a format that actually suits the unit's reporting. And we've had the SAP team in our house trying to resolve it. So the system's working, it's just the formatting of the final reporting in a format to align with the level of service that's a problem, as opposed to the actual system.
Right, so one of the complaints that I've had over the summer period has been the state of our rubbish bins, not, just constantly overflowing, filled with rubbish. The report detail we've got on page 77 basically says reduce the number of customer service requests relating to litter bin clearing. Target is 240. There's reporting detail no longer available post implementation of Hybris. And then another update saying reporting for this will commence mid-January 2019. An additional category for litter bin clearing requests will be added to the new request system to enable us to do that. So next time we get the report, we should know how many complaints we've had about litter bins not being cleared.
Based on that advice,
yes. That's what it says.
Yes, so in the stats that you do get through, I think they come through the CE's monthly report, and I also reported they actually give you a breakdown of the 50,000 odd reports that come in each month to council and where they're landing and what they're about. Right. But we can certainly give you a report about where they are.
Yeah, and so just in terms of finishing that one, so as part of that new information, will we get the time lag between when someone makes the complaint and when the work is actually done? Like we'll know, if things have been resolved within 24 hours versus 2 weeks?
Just a quick observation before I try to answer that. The report you're looking at is a point in time, and that point in time is the 31st of December. So the comment about mid-January 19 is actually after this, that date falls after this report was captured.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know whether that's actually occurred, but that it's in the future, even though we're looking back at it from February. So as to the time lag, I can't really comment on what the reporting can do.
Okay, and the final point, I was just wondering if we could make some of these measures public so we could track them in real time on our website.
Well, I think that is Councillor Manji's intention with these results. They've always been available on the agenda and minutes anyway, but I think there is a new initiative about communicating reports from this meeting. So they always have been publicly available, but they'll be more easily accessible now.
If you take things, sorry, just to finish on that, but if you take things like the water network, where we've got a lot of people complaining about breakages, and we've triaged, the really urgent, the medium, and we've got a response time, but for people to understand, whether it's the trees that have blown over, how much work we've actually got on towards dealing with something, having real-time indicators on our website that said to people, look, we've had 1,000 complaints or CSRs for tree clearance. we're working through it. You know, here's kind of what's happening in real time. Are we ever going to be able to likely look at that?
Well, look, that's a quite different form of reporting to this attachment for this meeting. But while I don't know the exact content, I do know that smart cities are looking at a city dashboard with lifetime data, and that kind of lifetime information would be one of the things that maybe you'd expect to see there. You'd really need a briefing on where that city dashboard is headed.
That is in play. Okay. Jimmy, did you have a question?
Okay, thank you, Thank you, Chair. On page 81, regarding to the participation in and the contribution to council decision making, based on your information, I'm particularly concerned. If we set up target in 2019, 41 at least, but 2018 resident survey track 29% in the declining, and particularly sensitive to declining. That's terrible, because this figure represents, you know, only the less than 30% people thought the council is their council. It's kind of no any relationship. But in the remedial action, you highlight some of the symptoms. That's pretty good. But I'm just concerned whether those symptoms can be converted to transfer to those root causes, how to improve. For instance, like the first one you particularly mentioned, have your system, because hasn't been running long enough to conduct a 4 year-on-year comparison. If no this system functioning, how do we track over the, for instance, like the last at least 3 years, the figure, whether that has been improved or not improved? Another one, probably we still need to consider, you know, those figures overall integrated figure, whether still need to break down to each ward, like a geographic to break down. And also, I remember I emphasized this for several times, but I didn't get any positive response regarding to engagement and also consultation. Those feedback, we need to review more detailed geographic and also demographic one. That's very important. Maybe some of the group, you know, already the increase, that's good and healthy. But some of the group probably is red, amber. We need to more focus on that one, try to improve and upgrade. Third one is you trust in community to do this one, but they still need you know, more sufficient resources can make that happen. So this is my particular concern, this issue.
So would anyone like to talk to the resident survey and the breakdown of that more detailed information?
Well, look, I can give some context to it. Look, that question has been asked for a very long time now. There's trend data over time. We do know from doing the LTP process and the benchmarking stuff in the service plan that all local authorities across New Zealand tend to score in the 40s around this. It's not as though Christchurch is particularly low. We would obviously like to see the result higher, but in terms of what's happening elsewhere, it's broadly similar to what's happening elsewhere. The measure is fairly generic. People are explained what it means and what the context is to the question. It's asked to all demographics, all regions. It would be possible, I think, to break down the responses by ward if you felt that was a useful thing to do. We can crunch that for you. There's also qualitative comments at the end that people make, which we could also crunch up a little bit better so that you could try to get a sense of what people mean, because two different people answering this question might mean two different things. And what they're not happy about could be wildly different from person to person. But there isn't, in these surveys, because they're across all of council services, they take about half an hour. And that's the point where people simply stop playing and doing the survey if you go longer than that. We've learned that there's a limit to how long you can make these things. So the question is asked, but there's no follow-up 3, 4, 5, 6 more questions to probe into what they mean. It just is what it is. So the options are break it out by ward, break out the qualitative feedback as well as the statistical stuff and bring that back, or try to add more probing questions to the next survey to figure out what exactly they mean by that. So they're the options on understanding what this information means. But broadly, it's very similar across New Zealand. There's nobody out there who's getting 95% results around democratic type questions, because there's simply so many people who don't understand what each organisation even does. They confuse it with other organisations and so forth. They're unhappy with ECAN, but we hear about it, sort of thing. So, you know, it's an imperfect science at this point.
But we could get more detailed demographic and ward-based.
You could split it.
feedback.
We can split it down by who the people are, where they live.
So, I mean, some wards may be at 95%. You don't know.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, in theory, yes.
We could be there, couldn't we?
Let's go with that. So yeah, we can break it down into a more demographic sort of snapshot for you.
Okay. Okay. Alrighty. Any other questions? Okay. Right. Have a resolution to receive the information in this report. Moved Dion, seconded Sarah. Any debate? Is that a question? Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, debate. Yes, Sarah. Where you go?
Just briefly, I think that the conversations over the roading and the roading program are really useful, and I know that we have a resolution sitting around somewhere that calls for greater community board involvement, and for community boards to have these lists and maps that show the condition of roads and where they currently sit in the priority for resurfacing and renewal is really important. However, it would be dangerous to start looking, I think, at switching between wards and those kind of things and starting to play one ward off against another. I think it's really important that as city councillors we have a high level policy which says, you know, these are the reasons that we prioritise our roading repairs, and those currently as priorities sit into condition and use. And there may be some roads in the city which have very low use and are in really poor condition. In fact, they'll be level 5. So Ferrymead Park Drive, Truscott's Road. Truscott's Road is level 5. It's really, really bad, but doesn't have a particularly high use. People going to the park and international visitors going to Ferrymead Park have to drive it. But it doesn't rate in the next 3 years as being repaired. And that's for a good reason. But I think that community boards need to be able to have a look and maybe swap ones within their wards, and I think that would be really useful.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Dion?
Yeah, I just wanted to voice my concern around what I heard before around the craft spend and how long that has taken. And I think, you know, there's a bit of a sounding board there around the Treasury stuff and how slow that process is. So, I mean, I keep getting questions from people about where that is, and it's good to sort of finally get an answer around that publicly. But yeah, I think I'm quite disappointed about how long that has taken. I'd like to see it sort of speed up quite quickly so we can actually get some sort of resolution and communication out to people so they actually know what we're going to do about what we've actually said.
Okay, Aaron?
Yeah, I just want to just counter those comments slightly around the roading. That I thought the way Dave raised it, because you can't, the blanket approach can work, but post-quake it can't, because the city doesn't have equity yet. And I look at my ward, I can't think of a grade 5 road in my ward. I don't know of any that are, we've got an intersection, but we've got no roads where people are unhappy about in the whole ward. And I just see that as being unfair, that there's other parts of the city that I live in that they have roads that they're not happy with. So to spend money on renewing and resurfacing roads in my ward doesn't make sense when there's ones like the one Sarah mentioned in her ward. I'd rather see those ones fixed. And our current system doesn't allow for that. Yeah, we might be able to horse trade within our own ward, but some wards I'm more than happy to send maintenance from my ward to other wards. They've got to be brought up to a livable standard. That's all.
Thank you. Yanni?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we get on top of our maintenance, and you know, I really can't welcome enough the review of how we're doing our maintenance. It just seems to me that, you know, repeated performance surveys are showing that people are losing confidence in how the city's being maintained, and we do need to get on top of that. So I welcome that coming back. So I don't think there's a need for an additional resolution today, but I think in the near future we may need to take some different course of action. I also really welcome the SCIRT report, the closeout report. You know, our staff actually predicted in 2014 the deterioration of our water main network because SCIRT had stopped water main renewals at Sarah's request. And staff, I think, gave us very good advice at the time, but they talked about the fact that leaving critical defects in the network will slow the recovery of the network to a stable state and have undesirable social and environmental effects. And we're seeing that with the huge number of water mains that are breaking and the huge issues with our reticulated network and the cost that we've picked up because of that decision by Sarah. So I look forward to us getting that closeout report. I think we do need to tell the story about what's happened post-earthquake and some of the decisions that were made and the impact that that's having on us financially and also environmentally. I think looking through the report too, that the issues around just basically getting new performance measures or being able to record those and then report them is just, it's happening, it's not here today, but you know, I think in the very near future when we get it, we need to really make sure that that information is in a way in which the community can understand. Because often, you know, when our call centre gets bombarded with requests, just take the wind damage, you know, there's a huge amount of requests that come in and that can skew some of these statistics, but there's actually good reason why things are not being done or other things are taking a priority. So, yeah, I welcome this report. I welcome the improvements. I think we should be honest with our communities about the impact of central government decisions on our recovery and the state of our infrastructure and the complaints that we're getting still to this day as a result. And I look forward to that other work being done.
Anybody else? Oh, well, thanks everyone. I mean, there's some good feedback there. I mean, clearly people are concerned about the feedback around water, reticulation especially, around leaks, our parks, and our roads and our footpaths, and it's all good stuff. And I think there's a clear message from councillors around data. Of course, the ability to make decisions about where we allocate money is up to us, and we do that through the annual plan every year. But I think improving our data, not just for us, but also for the public, will be of help, and hopefully we can bring that through this committee as we go along. Okay, well, I'll put this motion. All in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried.